Night before, fill the pots, put them on the stove. First thing this morning, you just turn them on. Set up the grist mill with the grains the night before. Measure out your grains, just flick it on. Now, notice the consistency of the grains. You can see how they're, well, let me just zoom in a little bit here. You can still see the husks, but they're entirely popped open. That's what you're looking for. Right, you don't want to crush the husks up, but you definitely want to expose all the starch. And we'll be back with mashing. So now we're getting ready to mash. We're going to dough in. My water is just about, one pot has already boiled. This one's at like 165. Leaving them open overnight allows a lot of the chlorine to dissipate. So, but it's always not a bad idea to just give it a sniff test and check it out. I'm lucky that my tap water here is pretty good. I'm also really psyched that I picked an awesome stove. It's got, where is it? Power boil. Can't beat power boil. Power boil. Awesome. So you cannot brew on an electric stove, but you definitely, you know, the stronger the gas stove, the better. I used to use a propane burner. The problem with a propane burner is it leaves a creosote kind of on the bottom of the pot, which is a pain to clean. So grist is just about done. You can see that the grist mill that comes for the KitchenAid doesn't have a decent enough hopper. You sit there forever filling it. So I just carved up a nice little mini trash can, you know, like the kind of use in offices and stuff. And it works pretty well. It gives me enough time so I can fill it up and walk away for, you know, 20 minutes or something and come back. I just rinsed out my grain bag. All right, so again, make sure your grain bag is big enough to fit in your bucket. I know some people call it a bottling bucket. To me, this is my mash tun, and this is just what I use for mashing, and I'll show you later on. As far as holding temp, the thickness of the mash pretty much holds the temp pretty well. If it's really cold in the house for some weird reason, I use my wood stove, and I'll actually mash right on the wood stove. But for the most part, just throwing it in the bucket is sufficient. So check back in a couple. All right, so my grist is finally done, all set. Put the grist mill away. Hello, Jonah. Water finished heating up and boiling. What I did now is, you can see I have the mash bucket all set. Long-handled spoons. Do not use dinky little spoons. You'll drive yourself crazy. Okay. So it should be nice and deep. I ran some of the hot water into the bucket to kind of prime it a little bit and make the grain bag go down to the bottom. So the process of dough-in is pretty straightforward. You start off with water, right, which we have going here. Let's pull the spoons out. Don't really need them right now. Now this water is really hot, but it's cooling off as it goes in.
Can I touch it?
No, Jonah, it's boiling.
Okay.
And then you take a little bit of grain.
And then put it inside
the bucket. You sprinkle it inside the bucket. Jonah, can you stir?
Yeah.
Awesome. See, it's always good to have an extra hand. So you stir it so it doesn't get lumpy. Right, but you gradually add the grain into the water. Now I'm going to turn off the water for a second because we have plenty in there.
Oh, Jesus, a lot of grain.
Don't try not to tangle it up in the grain bag, right? There you go. Stir. That's it. We're just sprinkling it to make sure it's evenly distributed. And we're making a pale ale because Daddy said he wants an IPA. So we're going to make an IPA. And the idea is make sure you have no lumps. Now right now this is a little too hot. As you add the grain, it tends to cool down a little bit. And what I do is I have 2 pots. So this one, as you can see, is at 180 degrees. That's pretty strong.
Wow.
Now, let's take a look at the other pot. Let me get my...
That was my grape juice. I'll be burning.
This is your other best friend, digital thermometer. Don't drive yourself crazy with little analog ones. And all of you culinary folks should have one anyway. So let's just double check. What are we looking at? 143. Yeah, so this one's cooler, that one's hotter. Now let's check our mash temp. 156. 159. All right, it's still within range, but it's a little on the high side. That's because I haven't added enough grain yet. So here we go. Let's add some more grain. And this is called dough in. So as you can see, I added plenty of grain. I didn't add any more water, and you can see how thick it is right now. And all you have to do is just stir it in as you go. It smells awesome. It smells like nuts, Jonah says, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I put this in, you can see the temperature's already dropped down to 140, 142. All right, so this is on the low end. This is where your beta amylase is working, 143. So we went from alpha to beta range. Now I'm going to add a little bit more water.
Add just a little bit. And then it'll
Stir
be
it in.
right.
Exactly. We have to kind of maintain. We're hoping for like a 150 or 149.
Mom,
Nice dry IPA would be
I
delicious.
like how you make wine and then you put the grapefruit in it. I think it looks
Oh, you like the grapefruit beer I made?
Yeah.
Yeah, well maybe we'll make another grapefruit one. I have to buy grapefruit though.
And
All
now I
right.
can drink it.
Well, no, you can't drink beer, honey.
Not all of it, but some of it.
I've been doing in for a while now. You can see I've got most of the grain gone and most of the water gone too. I just shut off the heat on the water because at one point I was doughing in and checking the temperature as I went along. And it dropped down to about 134, which is a little bit too low for what I wanted. I want to make a nice dry beer, so I'm looking at like 147, 148 ideally. So then I cranked up the water heat, let it boil for a little bit, and then started adding in some boiling water, stirring it from the bottom. You know, you can see it's pretty thick. You know, it's a pretty deep bucket, so it's going all the way down to the bottom. There's a lot there. Now, when I check the temp now, let's see where we're at. Yeah, 155, 56. We're on the high side, 157 even. All right, so this is where alpha amylase is working. This will make a sweet beer, and that's what I do not want in my IPA. So, so what I'm going to do is add in a little bit more grain, and as I said, I've got this other pot of not as hot water that I can add a little bit in to help cool it down. So this is the process you want to do, is just constantly adding water and grain and mixing together as you go along, checking the temperature. Having two pots, one hotter than the other, helps a lot. The extra water is not going to go to waste because you're going to need that for sparging later anyway. So better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So it's been about an hour, and I just checked the temp. It's down to like 142 in some spots, so it's lowered a little bit, but it's still in good shape. I started in around 148, which is right at the cusp. But again, I want to make a dry beer, so beta amylase, you know, that 130 to 149 range is what I wanted to be at. So pretty good stuff here. Now we're going to do an iodine test. So what we have here is a plain white plate. Got my little ladle. I stirred it up to make sure it's a consistent sample here. And we're just going to take a little bit of liquid off the top, right? Hopefully as few chunks as possible. Spread it out over the plate. Okay. Again, the chunks don't really matter. Now I have plain old Rite Aid antiseptic solution. It's a pure orange iodine. It's only a couple bucks for a giant thing of it, and it'll last you forever. So just take a little drop and see how it stays orange. There we go. We have mashed out. So by the fact that it stays orange, that tells me that all of the starches have been converted into sugars, and we are ready to start sparging. Okay, so here's our sparge setup. I moved the bucket up onto the counter here. Gravity is your friend. It's not just a good idea, it's the law. And I'm heating up a little bit more water. I consolidated my 2 pots, so I'm heating it up just a little bit more. Now I have here just a plain old plastic lid from like a quart container, and you float this on top, all right? And this just effectively helps you to disperse the liquid. And now we open this up a little bit, right? There we go. You'll see nothing wants to come out. Oh no, crisis! No problem. Watch this. Handy dandy mash paddle, right? We're going to stick this inside the bucket over the spigot. So I slid it down inside to cover the spigot so that the grain bag doesn't get sucked in. And look at the flow. I'm actually going to reduce it just a little bit here. About like that. That's good. All right, so what's going to happen now is as the liquid is coming down, you'll start to see the grain showing on the top. That's okay. I'm going to swap it out. Notice I have 2 of these bowls. Now you don't have to use bowls. Obviously you can use saucepans or whatever. A handle is convenient so that you can swap it out in between. And I'll show you that in a second. Now, that's the problem with trying to videotape while you're brewing is I just swapped out the empty bowl for this one. And you can see the grain already starting to show. You gently pour this onto the lid so it doesn't form a channel. And it disperses. Now, to help thin out the mash a little bit, excuse me, Jonah, to help thin it out a little bit, all right, and you raise the temperature so that the sugars are more soluble, because that's the whole idea. We want sugar, not grain. I'm adding a little more hot water to the top, just a little bit. All right. There we go. And now you notice that bowl's getting full, so I'm going to swap it out again, and I'll check back with you in a few minutes. And then I'm going to pour this water up over the top, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a sec. Okay, so this is how we swap it out. I have to hold this, lift it up, slide the chair out, slide this pot under the bowl while I'm holding it, and then remove the bowl. So obviously I can't do that because I only have 2 hands. So while I'm doing that, I can't be videotaping, but I'll show you what it looks like after. So here we go. It's going into the pot. Still got the float up there. Now we take some of our warm water. Yeah, nice and warm. Not too hot, because if it's boiling, it's going to extract all the tannins from the grain. We don't want that. But the cool thing is, because it's hot, it's going to sit at the top. And because it's water, it's lighter than the wort, so it's also going to sit at the top. And there we go. We'll shut this off. Keep it at that nice temp range. Let that drain a little bit. Eventually there will be no color to the liquid up here. It'll just be water. Right? The important thing is to keep the flow rate the same. Right? This is a fly sparge. What this does is you get better extraction versus like a batch sparge where you would stir it up, drain the liquid, add more water, stir it up, drain the liquid. The problem with that method is you get a lot of protein in there. You also get a lot of tannins from the grains. It might seem simpler, but in reality, all this is the same amount of effort. It's just using gravity and a little bit of patience. So, hey, good beer is all about patience. And here she comes.